Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. You are tuned in to the Networking RX podcast. I am your host, Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for referring. Recently, I was on a podcast. It was actually a live broadcast on LinkedIn, Facebook. It was the Be Better broadcast with Brandon Eastman, and one of his listeners posted a question for me to answer, and the question was something akin to, does how we communicate with one another matter? Does how we address each other, whether verbally or whether orally or I guess in written language is really what the question was. And my answer to it was, yeah, of course it does. How we address one another certainly matters. And what I referred to in there was something I had read years ago in the book Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success by Dr. Adam Grant. If you have not read Give and Take, pick it up, give it a read. I think you'll really enjoy it. And I enjoyed it. I read it several times. I read it so many times and highlighted this and that I ended up just typing up my highlights because it just made it easier for me to find the things I was looking for. But a lot of great information in there. But there's a chapter in there with a curious title. It's chapter 5, and the title is The Power of Powerless Communication. How to be modest and influence people. And in the chapter, Adam Grant, Dr. Grant, talks about, he starts off the chapter talking about an attorney, and the attorney kind of not your, I guess, I don't know what a typical attorney would be, but not what you would think would be your typical attorney for a high-profile trial. Soft-spoken, stuttered, and was up against New York City high-paid attorney types. And the unassuming, we'll call him unassuming, attorney essentially won. And what Adam Grant goes on to share is that it was largely his communication style. And he talks in the chapter about two types of communication styles. He talks about powerful communication styles, and he talks about powerless communication styles. Powerful, powerless. When you think of the notion, well, you need to speak powerfully, I can think of back when I was, first out in business, or, I guess it was still in law school, helping a guy write a book, and his big criticism of me is, Frank, you need to be more powerful in your writing. You need to just, come through and be very definitive that, hey, this is the way it'll be. And I could see where he was coming from. In business, you need to believe in yourself. You need to communicate that belief. You are great, and what you have to offer is awesome, and you just need to basically say it, and say it like that, and really mean it. And for whatever reason, I wasn't doing that. I was using couching terms like, this might be something you might enjoy. And this guy was my boss. I certainly respected him, and I was going to comply. Certainly because he was going to change it anyways. It was his book, and that's what he wanted. Don't know that I was necessarily comfortable with that, but that's what he was looking for. And so when I got this question on the Be Better broadcast with Brandon Eastman, I reflected back to that, and it does matter how we talk to one another. And again, there are powerful ways to communicate, and there are powerless ways to communicate. And neither one is right. Each kind of has its own place. But I do want to kind of talk about powerless communication and its place in building relationships. What Dr. Grant talks about in the book Give and Take is he says, with powerful communication, he calls it a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. And with powerless communication, it's kind of it has the ability to be win-win. Let me use an example. It's probably the best way to approach this topic. There are two ways that you can tell somebody about, let's say, a restaurant or a place to visit. Hey, when you're in, I'll use my hometown, when you're in Houghton, Michigan, you have to go to the Ambassador. The Ambassador is iconic. It has the best food. It has the best pizza you will ever have. You'll love it. Everybody who goes there loves it. You have to do it. You have to put it on your list when you go to Houghton, Michigan. That's powerful communication. I'm, basically selling a point. I'm pushing it. Powerless communication would be something along these lines. When you go to Houghton, Michigan, if you get to Houghton, Michigan, you should try and get to the Ambassador. It's downtown Houghton. It's been there for a long time. Most of the locals know of it. It's got really good food. You'll probably like it. The pizza, I think you'll really enjoy. You ought to try it if you get a chance. That's powerless communication. There are a lot of couching terms in there, and there's a huge. They're both saying the same thing. Go to the Ambassador. No, the Ambassador is not sponsoring this episode. But they're both saying go to the Ambassador, but they're doing it in two different ways. Now, before I read Dr. Grant's book and read this particular chapter on powerless communication, I'd often thought about this, or not really necessarily the distinction, but people have come at me with powerful communication about a restaurant or a place to live or something I need to do when I'm on vacation, or a book I need to read, whatever it is. It's very powerful. It's very, the distinction that Dr. Grant has in the book is it's kind of a dominating or a dominant sort of a way of communicating. It's the best. You'll find it's the best. If you don't find it's the best, there's obviously something wrong with you, because everybody I've talked to says it's the best. It's the greatest. And I've always been uncomfortable with that, and I've never really been able to put my finger on it, why I was uncomfortable with it, until I read this particular chapter. And it kind of changed the way I try to communicate with other people. I'm sure there are points where people can point out where I've had more of a dominant sort of a communication style, but I try to adopt more of a powerless communication style. And the reason for that is that when you have that powerful communication style, you're really taking something away from others. I was always uncomfortable somebody saying, "Hey, you need to do this." I've always kind of pushed back on peer pressure anyways. That's just kind of been my personality. Not push back, but just I'm not going to go along just because people say, just because it's the cool thing necessarily. I'm going to do what I feel is right, what's good for me. And so when somebody's saying, "Hey, you need to do this," oh my gosh, you'll love this. What they're doing is they're taking away from me my ability to have an opinion, is really what it boils down to. Now, I get it. If somebody out there is in sales, they're like, "No, powerful communication. You got to have powerful communication. That's the only way. You got to believe in what you do. You got to believe in what you're talking about." I totally agree with that. But this is a podcast about relationships. It's not a podcast about sales. And if you're looking to have relationships with people, then you need to give people the space to form their own opinions. You need to give people space to make their own decisions. And a great way of doing that is through this powerless communication, where we're signaling vulnerability. I don't really know what you'll think, but I like it. We're relying on the advice of others. Others seem to like it. Um, and there are disclaimers or hedges. But what that does is that opens the door for somebody else to have an opinion. And that's kind of a gift in a way. It's kind of letting it's a means of showing somebody respect. You know what? I like it. You may like it, but I'm interested in hearing your opinion. Now, somebody might come back regarding the Ambassador, which is a wonderful restaurant. It's right on the main drag in Houghton, Michigan, about far north in the state of Michigan as you can go, just before you get to the lift bridge separating Houghton and Hancock. There's my little PSA for my hometown, just as an example. But you allow people the opportunity to have their own opinion, and that powerless communication can be powerful in and of itself because people tend to be more comfortable around it. People tend to, when somebody is coming at me with powerful communication, I don't really want to be around them because they're basically saying is you don't get an opinion. My opinion is what matters. I'm coming at you. I'm in charge, and you're going to love this. And that's just the way it's going to be. And I don't want to say nobody, but generally speaking, people don't like that. But this powerless communication, where you're kind of hedging a little bit, and you're giving them the opportunity to kind of make decisions for themselves, that's a form of respect. That's something that people like, and they trust being around people who are exhibiting this powerless communication. I tend to, and again, I try to do this. I tend not to make meetings mandatory, like when I have meetings with my franchisees. Sometimes I've never made something mandatory because it's really kind of hard to enforce in this environment. And even in when I was working for somebody, I was always uncomfortable with somebody saying, well, this is a mandatory meeting. It's like, yeah, how about it just be really important and you really need to be here and give people a reason to want to show up. The fact that the boss is saying, hey, listen, this is an important meeting and I need you to make every effort you can to be here. That's different than saying, hey, this is a mandatory meeting. You're sharing a different level of respect with people. You're giving them the ability to choose. Now, they may choose not to come to the meeting after you say it's really important that you get there. I would really appreciate it. It's a whole different means of communicating with people. And so what Dr. Grant talks about in the book Give and Take is that people who are takers, people who want the upper hand, they're the ones who are generally talking in these very powerful terms. Whereas givers, people who are open to really building relationships and affording other people respect, they're willing to talk in these powerless terms. Expressing vulnerability, expressing a little bit of doubt. I'm not really sure if you'll like it. I like it. I know I like it, but I'm not sure you will. But I think it's worth giving a try. That those are people who are really more prone to try to build relationships with people. Somebody can go to that restaurant and they can try that restaurant, and then they can come back and they have the free will to say, you know what, it really wasn't my cup of tea, or slice of pizza, as you will. And that's fine. And they feel, they have the space. they have the respect. You've afforded them the space and the respect to essentially form their own opinion and share their own opinion, and know that it's a safe space where they can share their own opinion. Oh, you didn't like it? Okay, wow. You know that that's interesting, or and maybe not even saying that. Oh, okay, wow. I like it. Sorry to have suggested it. I mean, you only get 3 meals a day, right? You can't, sorry you wasted a meal on it. But I guess that's a whole nother conversation if they don't like it. But what I'm not talking about here is about sales puffing or being outright deceptive with respect to powerful communication. That's a whole nother conversation. Actually, that's probably a whole nother podcast. We're not talking about sales here. We're not talking about, twisting words or being deceitful or anything like that. We're just talking about when you're talking to other people and sharing things with other people, having the security in your own position to be respectful that they're going to have a position, that they have an opportunity to talk and draw their own conclusions. And that's really what Powerless Communications is about. So back to, again, my interview on the Be Better broadcast with Brandon Eastman. How we communicate with each other is important. How we communicate with each other is important. And I think that taking the time to really kind of couch your words so you are giving other people the opportunity to draw their own conclusions. Because let's face it, everybody has a different situation. Everybody has different perspectives. Everybody has different tastes in pizza. Back to my example. And they're not going to be the same taste that I have. But giving people that space that they can kind of draw their own conclusions is really a great way to build relationships. May not be the best way to make sales, to close a sale. I don't know, but that's not what this podcast is about. This is about building relationships. And I think through powerful relationships, through strong relationships, you end up making more sales in the end. If all you're doing is just trying to close a sale, you're at the mall, you're trying to, close on a set of knives or something like that, you'll never see anybody again, then okay, powerful communication is great. But if you're meeting with a client, you're a financial advisor, and you're trying to advise somebody on their financial situation, talking in powerless terms, couching terms, which you think they might want, serves to preserve the relationship and keep people around. So just something to think about as you're out there communicating with people. To remind people, we are looking for individuals to help grow our organization, AmSpirit Business Connections. If you're somebody out there that would like to just have a chapter, certainly contact us. Contact me using the email in the show notes, or the one we have leave at the end of the podcast. Or if you're interested in leadership opportunities or franchise opportunities within AmSpirit Business Connections, I'm open to having those conversations as well. Just contact me. If there's somebody you want to refer me to, that's great. I always appreciate it. I think it's probably the best way, use couching terms. It tends to be a better way, I find, to connect me by emailing them and copying me in on that, and then I can respond and we can go from there. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.